All right, we're holding on bottom of page, towards the bottom of the page of Tzadik Amud Beis. Itmer Nami Rabbi Yochanan. So we're talking about the different sources in the Torah about Tchias HaMeis and the resurrection of the dead. So Itmer Nami Hachi, Itmer Nami, we also learned. Rabbi Yochanan Bar Yochai. Rabbi Yochanan said the name of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Minayin, how do we know that Shakadosh Baruch Hu Mechayim Meisim? How do we know that Hashem is going to resurrect the dead? And Videi Masha Asid Liyos, what's going to be? Which is one of the questions that one of the minim or Apocryphim asked asked from Rabbi Shua ben Chananya. So he says Shenemer, because he quotes the pasuk of talking about Moshe Rabbeinu that says Hinach shoichev im abaysecha. You're going to rest with your parent, with your forefathers. V'kam, and then you will resurrect. Tanya. So from there we see that, and also the pasuk continues also afterwards that the Bnei Israel are going to rebel against Hashem. So we see clearly that same pasuk has in it both the resurrection of the dead and the future, what's going to be. Tanya Omer Rabbi Lezer Bar Yosi B'dover Zez Yafti Sifrei Minim. That Rabbi Lezer, the son of Rabbi Yosi, said that he showed the heretics, hey Aaron, that the chumash that they use, the minim, whether it's early Christianity or what have you, but the minim, the sfarm that they use is false. Why? Because they don't believe in Tchias HaMesim. They don't believe that the resurrection of the dead is something that's part of the Torah. And because of that, hold on a second. Hey, Lorraine. So because of that, so he showed them clearly in the Torah, Amarti lehem, so I told them, Zayaftim teraschem. The Bible that you use is false. Now the word ziyaf also means not just that it's false, also means that you've corrupted it, you've made it false. The Mefarshim say that they changed everything in their Torah. The other psukim that we have that's brought down about that's brought for proofs that we brought before in last week's class of resurrection of the dead, like Nasati lahem, not lachem, that I'm going to give them the land, not you the land, which comes to show that it's going to be that the Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov are going to be resurrected. They changed the word lahem lachem, so therefore there's no proof that there's a pasuk. So he says, but one pasuk they didn't change. And therefore you didn't gain anything. What do you mean you didn't gain anything? You didn't gain anything by trying to change your the Bible that they use. He says, Rashi says, Ziyaftim b'lei halisem kizav atim oimrim ve'emamam b'divrechem. It's false what you're saying. There's no substance. Because why? It says in the verse, that if it's talking about willingly committing the acts of idol worship. So it says that person is going to be hikaris tikaris, is going to be, the soul is going to be cut off. It's from the word karis. Avoina bay, and the sin is still going to be there. So the question is, hikaris tikaris by the mazeh. You're going to be cut off, meaning you're going to be punished with death in this world. Avoina ba le'emos. So when is the sin? I mean, if you're already not here in this world, so when is there the sin that the pasuk continues? Avoina ba, that there's a sin still with you. Le'emos lav le'emva. It's talking about the world to come. It means the afterlife. After this physical world, there's going to be a time that you're still connected to the sin. So Papa said to Abaya, why did he have to bring proof from the fact that the pasuk says hikaris tikaris avoina ba, meaning that the punishment for idol worship is karis, and you still have the sin, meaning there's an afterlife where the sin is still there, even though you've been punished and you're no longer in this physical world. The pasuk should have said tikaris or yesh or karis. You have karis. Why does it say he karis tikaris 2 times that you're going to be cut off? What's the 2 times? Any have amrele. So blame to vayu mi cars to cars. You have armally because then they would have responded to him. Dibra Torah b'kilash b'nei adam. That's you're right that the Torah doesn't have to double say karis t kares 2 times karis, but that's the Torah is just talking the way people talk, meaning to say it's not exact with its words. It's not coming to indicate that there's two levels of being cut off, this world and the afterworld. But when the pasuk adds avoyna but there's still a sin, so then we see that there's an afterlife. Because now, hey Shruki, we're holding bottom page Sadik Amid Beis. We're middle of about 5-6 lines from the bottom. So the Ketanoi. So this argument between, or this so not argument, discussion between Rav Papa and Abaya. Did Rabbi Yossi answer these heretics? These that their Torah itself indicates that there's the afterlife by the fact that the pasuk says Hikaris Dekaris Avoyna Ba, that there's the cutoff and then there's a continuation of the sin means there's an existence. But what's the proof of the pasuk? The pasuk is saying if there's no existence after this world, right? If you don't believe that a person believes there's no afterlife, this is your existence in this world. Everyone agrees people die, right? And there's no one who's saying there's eternal life. But there's people who say there's eternal life, but there's no afterlife. After a person, I mean, there's life, and there's no afterlife. After a person dies, it's over. So the pasuk says the cars avoiding you still have a sin means there's something still alive, there's something still existing that holds on to the sin. So if once there's cars, it's over. You don't live anymore. So the very fact that there's avoiding there's still sin afterwards means there's an existence after this existence. So the Gemara says that Abaye wanted to say the pasuk itself shows there's 2 levels of karis, but then you can say that's lashon b'nei adam. That's just the way people speak. And he goes, we find that this is also in a discussion by Tanoim. I'm not going to say an argument. It's not a fundamental argument, but he says Kitanoi, like we find there's a discussion by the Tanoim. Because of course, Rav Papa and Abaye are the Amoraim. They're the sages of the times of the Talmud, and so we're bringing down this idea also the sages of the times of the Mishnah. It says hikaris ba'olam hazeh. The first word karis is to indicate that a person who serves idol will be cut off from this world. Ti karas la'im haba. There's going to be an additional, so to say, punishment, which is the cut off in the world to come, which means there is an existence in the world to come, but this person won't experience it. Divrei Rabbi Kiva. This is the thinking of Rabbi Kiva. Amle Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Shmuel says no. It doesn't mean to say that. Why? If you're counting how many times it says word kares, in before it's talking about the sins that were. This is in the laws of the sacrifices for sins. But in the pasuk, the verse says before the pasuk says. The person does willingly, seemingly. So according to Rabbi Shmuel understands this pasuk to be also talking about idol worship. So it already says that if a person willingly, meaning b'mezid, serves idols, is Hashem hu megadef. It's a desecration to Hashem, and the punishment is kares. So then we have 3 times kares. If you're counting the words kares, then there's no 3 worlds. It's this world and the afterworld. What's the 3rd world? Yesh ela v'nichirsa ba'olam hazeh hikaris la'olam haba hikaris tekaris divrei adam kilashim b'nei adam. So therefore, sorry. Amalei b'shma v'kfar nemer as Hashem hu megadif v'nichirsa v'chishleisha olam yesh el v'nichirsa ba'olam hazeh means he's going to get punished from this world. Hikaris la'olam haba. But therefore, that the Torah says hikaris tikaris doesn't mean to say this world and the afterworld. It's just lashon k'bnei adam. And the first karis is olam hazeh. The second karis tikaris is olam haba, and that's it. So he disagrees with Rabbi Kiva. Now Rabbi Kiva doesn't have a problem with the first pasuk because the first pasuk Rabbi Kiva says it's not talking about idol worship. It's talking about 2 different sins. The first pasuk is talking about a person whose curses chas v'shalom Hashem. That's one punishment. That's the first chorus, and the second chorus of punishment is for idol worship. So but now the Gemara asks the question: what's time out? Okay, according to Rabbi Shmuel, he says the first chorus is for idol worship in this world. The second chorus ti chorus is lashon b'nei adam is for olam haba. Fine. So both of them agree that there's a punishment in this world and the afterlife. But what about we have the avodah haba? We have the second pasuk. We have the same pasuk that Rabbi Yossi argued with the minim, with the heretics, with the Christians. What's Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Kiva going to agree? According to both of them, that's a 3rd time. So Bein Rabbi Shmuel Ben Rabbi Kiva avoyna ba. What's it mean avoyna ba that you still has the sin? That's talking about another time. So if karis the first time is Olam Hazan, he karis to karis, whatever, according to Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Kiva, means that there's Olam Haba. But according to both of them, after that statement, it means Olam Haba. So what's avoyna ba? What's that talking about? So my Avid Bay, what are they going to do with it? So the Gemara says the Titania like we learned that Yochel Filas Tshuva, that a person may think that a person gets punished with the afterlife. Even if they do tshuva, means there's a punishment that you have. We have the things like this. We learned before that Yeshua told Achin, right? Yeshua told Achin that when Achin sinned, he says, do tshuva, admit your sin, and then you won't be punished in the afterlife. So he says, you would think that once a person does such a sin, that's punishable by karis, by being cut off and being put to death in idol worship intentionally. That's it, that the person is totally disconnected. So Yechal Filas Tshuva, what happens if the person does repentance after they do the sin? So they get karis, they get put to death, but they did tshuva, they did repentance. Talmud Leimer Avoyna Ba Leimarti Alizman Sha Avoyna Ba. That when is the punishment in the afterlife? Only as long as the sin is still with you. So Avoyna Ba is not a third stage, but it's an explanation that when is there a punishment in the afterlife if you don't do tshuva. But if you do tshuva, if you repent, very much connected now. We're in Rosh Chodesh. If you repent, so the punishment's the punishment, but the tshuva fixes that that through the punishment you could go to the afterlife into Olam Haba. Okay, so that's the final on that discussion. Rashi says over here. The second to the last, third to last Rashi on the page. He said like this: if a person doesn't do tshuva before the misa, before being put to death, before the karis, you have to remember, karis is not punishable by the courts; it's punishable by God. Is have bekaris, then you stay disconnected. Aval shav, if a person does tshuva, loy, then the person has an experience in the world to come. Okay. So now the Gemara says like this: Shala Cleopatra Malchus es Rabbi Meir. Cleopatra, which according to Rabbi Steinsaltz, it says that was Cleopatra. We all know Cleopatra, the time of Julius Caesar, etc. But according to Steinsaltz, that was the name of the queens of, I guess, of the extent, Greece, Yavan took over Egypt. There was Talmud Melech, which was the king of Egypt, was an extension of Greece. And when the Romans came, so they were technically, and even when they were in Egypt, they were really fighting with the Greeks. So Cleopatra was the name of a Greek queen, which doesn't mean a specific person, but it was like the pharaoh. So that's what Rabbi Steinsaltz says, if anyone knows differently. Chelek Cleopatra Malchusa. So the queen Cleopatra asked Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir lived after Rabbi Kiva, that's already well after Julius Caesar, right? A few hundred years. So Amar Rabbi Meir, so she asked Rabbi Meir, 150 years, whatever. She asked Rabbi Meir, Yadana, I know the Chaye Shchiva, that the people who lived the people who Shchiva, the people who are resting, meaning the people who passed away, will be resurrected. There'll be a resurrection of the dead. She accepts that. And where does she know that from? She quotes another pasuk. She quotes a verse. Everyone was knowledgeable, of course. That they're going to grow out like the wheat, like the grass of the earth. So just like grass comes out of the earth, so too, from this is an indication, even though the pasuk is not really talking about that, but she understood it to mean that's an indication of the resurrection of the dead. But that she accepts. That pasuk, for some reason, she doesn't quote any of the other verses, but she quotes that verse. But specifically, the Mefarshim say she specifically quotes that verse because of her next question. So she says, so therefore she asks, however, she's wondering when the resurrection of the dead does happen, are people going to be resurrected naked in the way they were created, or the way they're born, so to say, when they first came to the world, or will they become in their clothing? Now, she doesn't say if the clothing mean clothing that they were buried in, the chrichim, the shrines, or just in general that they would have clothing. So Meir responded to Cleopatra, so you should learn from wheat. Just like the seed of wheat gets put into the ground naked. I mean, say the seed is just the way it is. And how does wheat grow with all kind of protection of garments right? So there's obviously, I mean, I just want to say something. The Gemara in Chelek is all Agaditas, mainly the, so to say, the Agada of the section of Torah. And we know that it's brought down from many tzaddikim that all the hidden secrets of Torah can be found in the Agada. So obviously all these questions and answers are not to be taken at face value only. So there's obviously deeper messages in everything in all the discussions. That's why there's a lot of commentary. Specifically, we have the Agadas of the Marsha, which is a great, although he was a great Talmudist, he was also a great Kabbalist. He's quoted many times by the Chassidish Rebbes. So the Marsha explains a lot of these questions. What was Cleopatra thinking, and what was the Soda for question? But so the answer is, he says, we could give an example from wheat. Machita shenikra aruma, just like the wheat is put into the ground, so to say, naked. Yoitze become levushim, and they come out with garments. Sadikim, we know garments is also mitzvahs, right? So the garments is the mitzvahs a person has. Mitzvahs are called levushim. So I guess maybe she was asking is, does a person, when the resurrection of the dead is, do you have anything? Do you have any past credit? Do you come out like you're born new, like whatever your first life was is your first life, now you start again, or do you come with garments with the things that you've acquired in your first existence? So he answers, and comes out with many garments. Tzaddikim, the righteous. So he doesn't say people. Tzaddikim means someone who lived as a tzaddik, or he or she lived as a righteous person. In the first existence, they go into the next world with their garments, with their mitzvahs, with their Torah. Even more so that they're going to come out, the resurrection dead. It's not going to be they're coming out naked without any past existence. That the tzaddikim are going to come, we can learn from the wheat. So she wanted to know if there's a person, maybe she's wondering, do you get a fresh start? Do you have a fresh start when you come back in the new existence, or is it something that the way you went in is the way you come out? Yes, Ricky?
Yeah, Rabbi, I'm curious. This is connected very strongly to the concept of Gilgulim, right?
Who?
Of Gilgulim,
Hmm.
of the.
Yes. That's why I think the Marsha says that's why she
I'm
asked.
trying to just putting it in context to the other cultures and religions that were going on at the time in the same geographic region. The further east you went, the more concept there was around a Gilgul, about a coming back of some sort, where you build on top of what you built until perfection. Whereas if you go closer to Assyria and Ashurbanipal and the northern parts of Iran, other places like that, you tend to have this idea of like burning and cremation with fire, which we learned about much earlier in Sanhedrin, if I recall. And so it seems like over here he's talking about, a tzaddik like that, because when you look at the translations here and it's talking about the seed being naked, it's talking about it being buried without the chaff, without the husk, the like
Mhm.
the impure parts of it that don't have anything grow. And the idea of a like of a soul kind of kindling a flame and building these things and turning the world into something spiritual, then when they're buried with their clothing, here by clothing it's alluding to not just their mitzvahs but just all of the things that they've done, in the
Exactly.
concept that they come back as a Gilgal.
Well, but he's not. She wasn't asking about Gilgal. She was talking about specifically because in Gilgal, I think it's not in this question. And one of the next questions, the examples that were given talks about that there was the concern of Gilgal of, so why we talk about the initial birth of person and not the specific birth of that person, as because we have reincarnations, but the thing what Cleopatra is asking about, I think, because if everyone has a schus in the world to come, especially we just finished the Gemara that says before avoina ba, right? That's if you do tshuva. So we're talking about a person. We're continuing in a conversation where there's the possibility of the afterlife, where after, even if you've sinned in this world, if you've done tshuva. So maybe she wanted to know how a person, how does it go in the continuation. I'm not sure if it's talking about specifically Gilgal, but here we're talking about that a person's buried with the levusha means they're buried with their deeds, and therefore they come out with garments. It's not, it means, of course everyone has tshuva and therefore everyone gets a new start, but doesn't mean that the person who did go with the levusha. And that's why he says tzaddikim. Why did he answer tzaddikim? I mean, we say so we use the word tzaddikim to quote the idea of hold on, Aaron. For the idea of olam haba, that tzaddikim get olam haba, but for amcha kulam tzaddikim, everyone's a tzaddik. So we're not just talking about I think there's an idea over here is that how you go into the ground is you come out with with the positive things in you, and if you don't tshuva, then I guess that's its positive levushim. I'm sure there's many. This is again this is definitely not just that she's trying to figure out a silly question if a person comes out in the afterlife and naked or clothed. There's obviously, like you said, she was exposed to many cultures being a queen, that she was trying to understand the thinking of Judaism. Yes, Aaron.
Okay,
I
two
hope I
quick
answered your question.
questions.
I'm not sure I'm correct, but I hope that's the idea of the answer.
No, that was what I was looking to hear. Was answer my question.
Thanks, Scott. Aaron,
Okay, so
yeah.
the first question deals with what he's saying. Okay, so if you don't finish everything in this life, so you're supposed to come down and get another body, start all over again. You don't remember the past, but you finish your business. Okay, once you finish your business, then you go up. But when everyone comes back, which body do you come back with? And if she says, you come in with what you started with, as you said just a second ago, how do you know which starter do you come with? The first.
That's an excellent question, Aaron. Maybe that was her question. Maybe that was specific. Maybe that was what she was trying to figure out. That if there are many Gilgulim, many reincarnations, so when it comes to the world to come and the resurrection of the dead, who is the host? So that question, it could be a very excellent point, Aaron. It could be that was what she's also alluding to. But there's different opinions about that. I've heard one answer being the best host of the soul is resurrected. So let's say a person can live many times. So the best host of the person is resurrected. But I think the conventional answer that's accepted is everyone is resurrected, because the soul has, even though there's the concept of reincarnation, it's not exactly the same person. Although there is some sort of idea in Judaism of deja vu. That's kind of the idea of Gilgul, is that, where deja vu comes from, where a person feels like they've been here before, they've seen this before, is connected with the idea of Gilgul of reincarnation. But the conventional answer to that question is that everyone is resurrected, whoever is worthy of it, but in different kind of, the soul has many hosts, just like it had many hosts in its existence, it has many hosts in the world to come. But it's a good question.
Now I have a really simple question. Okay,
Sure.
So everyone knows that a lot of these punishments, which are killing, we don't do anymore because we don't have the temple. So now God can do stuff to us, disown us, or kill us, or make us have a shorter life. Does that still happen because even though we don't have the temple?
Yeah, I mean, Karis as it is, the Karis, I mean, the Torah says the person who eats chametz on Pesach gets Karis, and Karis means you don't live past 50 or 60. We don't see, that's a famous question. We don't see that people get Karis today. So the Karis, as the Torah punches it, that says specifically, you'll get Karis for this sin. Past this, you won't live past this age. We don't see anymore because it's brought down in Chassidus that you don't live, that in the times of Beis Hamikdash, we were only existing from holiness. And therefore, so as soon as you disconnect from holiness, you sort of say have no battery. But in the Galus, in the exile, unfortunately, a person could tap into the negative energies, the energies of the Gentiles' energies, and then you start existing off what's called the Ein Sarim, the 70 masters of different countries. But there is still death that's punishable, but not in the same system that it was in the temple. Okay. Amalek Keser Rabbi Gamliel. Caesar said to Rabbi Gamliel, if remember, Gamliel was the Nasi, right? So this is Rabbi Gamliel of Yavnim, probably. So the Caesar said to Rabbi Gamliel, who traveled many times to Rome, you guys say that the people who rest, meaning the people who die, will be resurrected. Ahava Afra, when a person passes away, they decompose into earth. Afra Mikachaya, could the earth be could earth become life again? So he basically was, again, these questions are not to be taken literally, simply, but in his question over here is that maybe similar to what Shuki was saying about the ash, that when you once you decompose, that's it. That should be the end of your life. So in that conversation, Caesar's daughter was present, and she interrupts the conversation and tells Rabbi Gamliel, Amrle Bresa. So his daughter says, Shavik Shveka, let me answer this question. Varna Mahadrina, I will answer my father. There's many times we have in the Talmud where Caesar's daughter comes in famous question about the gold cups, the gold. I think we had in Sanhedrin or Rosh Hashanah, the gold vessels and the silver vessels. So Amalei Bresa Shvake. So she said, "Be quiet. Leave it. Vanam Hadran. I'll answer my father." So Shnei Yoitzrim, you have two people that are talented in forming something. Yoitzrim means to form something. Yesh B'Reinu, we have in our city, hypothetically. Echad Yoitzrim Minamayim, one could create something from water that has no substance, right? Water is not a material that you should be able to create something with. We're obviously not talking about a menorah made of ice. Echad Yoitzrim Minatit, and one can make out of tit, which is clay. So which one would you be more impressed with? Someone who could create something, even if you make out of ice, right? If when someone makes a menorah out of wood or metal, everyone's whatever. Okay, another menorah. But when it comes to forming something out of ice, right? Everyone comes to watch how the menorah is being made. It's something unique. So what's more meshubach? What's special? So the Caesar said, or she responded on behalf of Caesar. Obviously, to create something from water is more impressive than to create something from a raw material like clay. So she said to him, So if you're impressed that something of water could be created, so something of clay even more, something something of clay is not as impressive. So God, who creates initial man from water, meaning to say from the liquid of the seed of the semen of between a husband and wife. And that's okay to you, that makes sense to you, but to take the actual earth and recreate from the earth itself, not having to go right, because we're just the carnation, the person gets created through the relationship with the semen of a man, so it's like a liquid. But if you take the actual earth itself, like first man was created from earth, so it's less impressive. So why are you so worked up that God could resurrect the dead if they decompose in the earth, if they could be initially created from just a small liquid seed? So okay. The way Rabbi Shmuel, the yeshiva of Rabbi Shmuel, understood that her answer was different. She said, and again, the yeshiva is not just that they were trying to record the accuracy of the conversation. There's obviously different understandings of what the answer is. So she's the yeshiva of Rabbi Shmuel said that Kavachoma, she gave an example of something else, of Kli Zachuchias. Kli zachuchias is earthenware, like glass, or so. Ma kli zachuchias she'amlam beruach basar v'dam nishbru yeshdam takana, just like glass that was created through blowtorch, right? So it's through wind of man. If it gets broken, there's a solution. You could remelt it and create it again. So basar v'dam, if man sheberuach HaKadosh Baruch Hu was initially created by the Spirit of God, the wind, Allah come even more so, he could recreate it. If you could recreate earthen glass, which also comes from the earth, so surely God, who created initial man from the earth, could also be created again. So why are you so worked up? I just want to see the Rashis. Amalei Bresa from the top of the page of 91a. Amalei Bresa, the daughter of Caesar, says to the Caesar, the Rabbi Gamliel, she says, Rabbi Gamliel, Shvaki, let me. She gives an example. If there were two people, but Yireinu in our city, so Amr Lai, so he said to her, she said to him, even so, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, if he's able to create a person through a seed which is liquid, through the semen, surely he could create from the earth. And the Rabbi Shmuel says, "Zuhi tshuva shiva lavia." This is what the Caesar's daughter answered. That makli zchuchi shamali beruach shel adam shekashu oisa yesh le shefreres v'noifach l'toichai v'chei nishma mipi ha'umnim. So just like the experts say that through a wind blowing, you go to Venice, right? You go to the places where they're making the glass, or the Seattle Glass Museum. So yeshlam takana la'atichon v'lachs v'lasem kli. If it breaks, you could fix it. This that we say in Chagiga, that when something breaks like glass, seemingly that glass is, once it's broken, it's broken. Not that you can't fix glass. The glass is vulnerable. It's flat. It's fragile. Again, even from Rashi's obviously doesn't just write things. He's obviously, I think he quotes. I just want to quote over here a few things because the conversation is obviously deeper than what they're saying here. He says like this. In this quote, he says, "Hikshema Farshim." The commentaries in this reading from outside publication. The commentaries asked on the question of Caesar. What was his thinking in the question? If he's talking conversation about God again, if we're having the conversation about God, means you believe in God, right? So he's just technically asking, how can God resurrect from the earth? So his question: so if he could create their world, why can't he resurrect the dead? The Kosfu, and so the answer. He didn't. He was asking according to our thinking. He didn't agree. He thought the world was evolution. He doesn't believe that there's a concept of a higher power that creates something from nothing. The world came into existence. The only thing that you could create in this world is something from something. You could take wood and make a table. You could take earth and make something. You can't create something from nothing. He's saying once a person decomposes, it's impossible to recreate a living being from earth. You could create other things from earth, but not a living being. So his daughter answered him, even he says, even according to you, means she didn't say that there is a God. Because if there's a God, then of course he could do anything. But even if you think that there is no God, and the only things in this world that we could recreate something from something, so if something like a seed could create a person, surely then the earth could create a person. And the Mashra answers that so they asked the question, what about first man? So the Mashra asked another question. The first man was also was created from the earth, right? So it's clearly in Torah, Bereshis, that God took earth and created man. So why was Caesar so worried? So he says, but his question was that first man was created from special earth. He was knowledgeable, the earth under the Mizbeach, where the regular person, just any person, comes up from the cemetery, wherever they are. Yes, Aaron.
You said we can make things from things, but God, doesn't he make things from nothing?
Yeah, that's the idea. That's what he didn't believe in Yesh Mi'ayin. The Caesar didn't believe to make something out of nothing. So therefore he felt that recreating a person from the earth is something from nothing. Whereas she said to him, it's not. Even if you don't believe in something from nothing, that recreating a person, according to the Rishonim, is something from something, because just like if a seed could create something, then the earth can. I guess you could speak to those who are into artificial intelligence of what we could expect in the future from Yesh Mi'yesh. Okay, let's continue with the Gemara. The Gemara says like this.
Wait, just about what you just said, but we created it and not God, but he gave us the power.
Yeah, but so the question is, on what level up to what level of intelligence can humans create? And it's another conversation. Let's go further. Omer lo Yahu mina li Rabami. A heretic said to Rabami, I think Rabami lived later, so we're talking about already this Christianity was already accepted by Rome. I mean, Rase the Shchivi Chai. So as the conversation goes further, the conversation gets a little more aggressive. So Amirase, this is that you say the Shchivi, those who are sleeping are going to be resurrected. Va'afra. He asked the same question similarly as Caesar. He turned into earth. Va'afra mikachai. Can you resurrect something from the earth? I'll give you an example. The Melech Basav Adam. You have a king. Sha'amar lavadav, he tells his servants, L'chu uvnu li paltrin gedolim. Again, Rabami was obviously aware of the conversation Caesar had with Rabban Gamliel and his daughter, but he didn't give the same answer, and obviously there's a reason why. But nevertheless, he gives an example. Sha'amar lavadav, that a king tells his subjects, L'chu ubanu li paltrin gedolim mimakum she'ein mayim v'afar. Go and build for me a palace that there's no water and earth, means the raw materials to create the palace is very limited for you to be able to do it. Therefore, you have to go out from other places. It's difficult. So they did it. They figured it out. They went and they schlepped the water from somewhere and the earth from somewhere. The Yamim Naflu, and eventually one day, as everything does, falls down. The palace fell. Amr Lehem, so he tells them, build it again. You don't have to go this time and find the water, and go wherever the water, find water on earth and build it again. They said to him, we can't. He says, what do you mean? He got angry at them. And so even more so that if you were able to initially build it with limited resources, now that you have resources, for sure you can build it. So what was the question? So Rashi explains. Achshav sheish shamayim, the Rashi on the side. So to God, if God creates man from a small seed, there's nothing in the seed, it's just the seed of the husband. So even more so now that there's material, the person is decomposed into the earth. So or he goes even more, like the Rishonim said, that if he was able to create the whole world, then maybe why wouldn't he be able to create the resurrected people? And he says, and if you don't believe me that there's such a concept in nature, go to the valley. There's a certain type of achbar, which is like a rat or insect or an animal. That was seemingly part flesh and part earth. The mocher, as time goes, basically the Rashi says that there's a kind of achbar that's reproduced, that's created not through intercourse or through reproduction process, but from the earth itself. That insects that come from the earth. According to Rabbi Steinsaltz, that he says, quotes the Rambam, that these things, that's not really like that. In modern science, it's something in the sort of say that I guess there's something in scientifically that explains it differently, but that the Gemara was talking according to the scientific knowledge they had at the time. Either way, you'll see eventually come full earth, full flesh, and so therefore it's just like this achbar could go from earth to flesh, so too God can recreate from the earth to recreate people. But you may say Shemer Tamer is Maruba, but that takes a long time. And here we're talking about the resurrection that happens immediately when God is ready. So Allah Lahara, so then I'll show you something else. If you go to the mountain, that you'll see there's only one snail. This is talking about special snails that was in the place of Zvulun that it's used for Tcheles. When the rain comes, like we all know, when the rain comes snails and slugs. Then it'll be full of snails. So where did they all come from? So we see things can happen immediately, even though it comes from the earth. Okay, Rashi goes into this. He says, Rashi goes, there's an achbar called Ashkarol. There's certain things that are not created through Tolda. It actually applies to Hilchas Shabbos also, what things you're allowed to kill, like lice. So he says about the Chilazon, it's interesting. He says about the Chilazon, Rashi says, it comes out, there's a kind of worm or snail that comes out of the sea. I'm not sure how Rashi has to tell us that once in 70 years, the Chilazon comes out. So I wonder those people who are currently today wearing tcheles, people wear tcheles today under the assumption that this is the right used for the right thing. So it says it comes out once in 70 years. It's over b'dam tcheles, and we use its blood, its liquids from this snail for tcheles. But Rashi says it only comes out of the sea once in 70 years. And first you only see one. And all of a sudden, when once the rain comes, seemingly, and I'm not going to go into the details, and again, I'm not sure how Rashi has to tell us all these things. It's not like but Rashi's obviously trying to tell us something. Rashi says that the Chilazon comes from the sea, and it comes once in 70 years. We use its blood for the dyeing of the tcheles. And initially, it's not like it comes out of the sea a whole bunch. It only comes out one. And after, when the rain comes, all of a sudden you see full of snails. So I guess it seems like from Rashi that the business, this is a business that was given to the tribe of Yisachar, of Zevulun, that it wasn't like there was, it was kind of a once in a 70-year experience. Benira Lemoiri, so he says like this, that my teacher, Rashi saying, my teacher taught me, Shebeitze Chilazon Mashritzin Kulan Alma Yesh Biyad Lachis Fisha. So he goes, where did they all come from? So he says, where did these? If all of a sudden it rains and there's tons of chila, there's tons of snails in the valley. So where does it come from? So he says, Rashi says, my teacher taught me. He doesn't say his teachers. His teacher taught him. We know who Rashi's teachers are. It doesn't say which one. That from this one chilazin that you saw came all of them. So we see that that something can happen fast. Maybe the achmor takes time to turn from earth to a proper. An achmor usually means like a rat or a mouse. So the chalaz in the snail happens fast, and it comes from the initial one. So you see that one can make many very fast. Okay. Again, the Mefarshim over here go into explaining why did we give an example of these two animals, both in Zvulun, a sign of the schar of those people who are Tomchei Daraisa, those people who support Torah study. There's a lot more to this conversation than I just want to see if there's anything I want to share about it. He says over here, the Ein Yaakov, he says the Ein Yaakov kind of that also puts together these Gemaras, kind of is alluding to the fact that the schus that is going to be the resurrection of the dead for Zavulun, for the tribe of Zavulun, even though they've preoccupied their time in business versus Torah studies, because they support Torah. So therefore, he's saying that there was resurrection. There's a sign of resurrection of the dead in the portion of Zavulun. Okay, let's go a little further. We just said that. So he's like this. Now we're going to the Gemara Gviyah B'Psisa. Gviyah B'Psisa was a famous person. Many people know this Gemara that we're going to say over the next little while. Gviyah B'Psisa was like the person, the underdog. He presented himself as a simple person. Just Gviyah B'Psisa, but he was obviously quite smart and got the Jewish people out of many difficult situations in the time of Alexander the Great. So he lived in the time when Alexander Mokten, known as Alexander the Great, conquered Eretz Yisrael in the time of Shimon HaTzadik, which is pretty much in the beginning when Greece conquered Persia, and part of the Persia empire was Eretz Yisrael, right? Koresh gave permission, Daryavish and Koresh gave permission to rebuilding of the temple, because Eretz Yisrael, the Jewish people, were under Daryavish, under Persia. When Greece conquered Persia, they went to go conquer Eretz Yisrael as well, and that's the famous story of Alexander the Great going to meet Shimon HaTzadik. So we're talking about the early days of the Second Temple, and in those days after he came in, so a lot of issues came up because he was the new ruler of the world, and Gviyah ben B'Sisa got the Jewish people out of some certain difficult situations. So what Amin tells Gviyah ben B'Sisa, from here you see Rabbi Steinzat says that Amin is early Christians, but from this story, obviously the Amin is not an early Christian, because Gviyah ben B'Sisa, if he lived in the time of Alexander the Great, was well before the time of Christianity. So he says this, Vailachen chayavim da'mirasein meisi chayin. He says, he was very aggressive. He says, Vail the chayavim, you're obligated, or you're kind of, it's wrong of you because you say that those who die will be resurrected. First of all, in his wording, he doesn't talk polite. Besides saying chayav, he also says misi chayin. He doesn't say shchivi, those who rest. He's being a little more coarse. So he says why? It's like this. Vailachen damiras, and you say the mesi chayin, the chayin mesi. Let me read this. He says like this. Vailachen chayave, he says, he calls them chayave, he says over here is Rishoyim. You're wicked people. Damirasan mesi chaye, that you say that those who die will be alive. Why? The chayin mesi, you see that the people who are alive pass away. So once they pass away, the mesi chayin, how could it be that the dead will come alive? He says if they're dead, they're dead. How could they come back alive? So he answers them. Gviyah ben B'Sisa answered to him. He goes, you're Russia. That you say that the people who die won't be resurrected. Why? Those who were never alive, the Havichaim that they became alive, like Kolshkin, even more so, he says someone who was alive should be able to come back alive. Because if you're saying that once you die, you can't become alive, you can't get life a second time. Well, second, how did you come alive in the first place? So he basically refuted his whole argument. So he was obviously an aggressive fellow, and he didn't like he was there, he was ready to give lip, but he wasn't ready to take it. So he said to him, Chayavi Karli, you call me Rasha? Does ikamina va'itnebachu b'shitin lakamasach mina? He goes, if I stand up, I could kick you and straighten your hump. So evidently, Gviya ben Basisa was a hunchback. So he says he threatened to hit him and to kick him and to straighten out his back. Obviously not through chiropractor. So Amrlay, so Gviya responded to him, Imata Isakein Reifa Uman Tikra V'schar Habetitol. If you think it's so simple to fix a person who has a hunchback, then you could call yourself a professional doctor. You'll make a lot of money in your practice. Again, seemingly this is just a wild conversation, but in see if Rashi for its quotes on it. Rashi says Rashi doesn't quote. He just says that chayav means that he was being aggressive. But the Ein Yaakov, I think, says that what he says. I'm going to quote two things, then we'll finish the class here, and we'll continue next class with the continuing stories of Gviya ben Basisa. He says, Bir Masha, the Masha explains the question. Shadin v'adorim shebeneim, the conversation between this person and Gviya ben Basisa was, this that we learn, that sheyesh rishayim she'en ein d'chisa mesim. The heretic over here in this case was talking about that the Mishnah says there are those who are not going to be resurrected. Like not just specific people, but there's generations that won't be erected. They won't be resurrected. For instance, Dara Mabel, the resurrection of the generation of the flood will not have, Rashi in the Torah tells us that will not be part of the world to come. And there are wicked that will live in the world to come. They will be resurrected. They will be judged for their wickedness. It means if you look at a person who dies wicked, don't think that their day is not coming. There'll be resurrection for certain people that they will have to be judged for their behavior. And he gives an example, Anshe Stom, the people of Stom. This is what the heretic was saying to Gviya. Why you Russia? Why are you saying there's going to be a resurrection date? And then there's going to be judgment for the wicked. Better that they don't become alive and they don't get judged. Why do you have to say that there's going to be a resurrection of the dead for the wicked? So Gviya ben Basisa answered him, Adrab, on the contrary. You're negative. So he basically, the heretic says to Gviya ben Basisa, why, if they're wicked, let them just die. Why do you have to say resurrection dead? They're going to be resurrected, and then they're going to have day of judgment. So he says, you're a bad person. Because you're saying I'm bad because I'm saying that there's going to be a day of judgment, let the dead just stay dead. You're bad. Let at least the wicked have an experience of the world to come. Because after the judgment, they're going to go through their punishment. They're going to be cleansed and be able to be expelled. Basically, the generation of Sodom, even though they're going to be punished for their horrible crimes, but they will be, after they go through the punishment, they'll be able to be part of the world to come. Whereas you're saying basically, let it be, and at least give them a chance after their repentance and after their tshuva that they should be able to get a portion of the world to come. So what? Then seemingly he then just got aggressive and he said, "I'll kick you and I'll break your back. I'll fix your back." So he says, "What's that? What's that have to do with what we're talking about here?" So then Yaakov says, like this. That he's making a kavachomer. He's saying something like this to him, like, mi sheyesh le'akimimus kavachomer shim yavitu ba yisher akum. I say like harei loikach ki abit bacha efshet esem muchach she'en ze kavachomer. V'heishiv loy imata oisekein claimer vadish yef shlasas kein. So he basically, then Yaakov says that what the heretic was saying to Gviya ben Basisa was, you're trying to tell me that if the people that were never born could be born, so surely the people who once were born could be resurrected. So he's saying the same thing with your hunchback. He's saying, if I can't fix that, even if it's a problem, he says basically like this. You can't make such kavachomer. Why? If a person was never hunchback, if you kick him, then you make him into a hunchback, but you damage his back, you break his back, is mishesh if a person has a hunchback. If you kick him, he will remain hunchback. And that's not the fact. Because if you kick him, you can straighten his back out. I'll straighten your back. So seemingly, just because a person was never alive and became alive, it's not a proof that the person who was once alive will be alive. Just like a person who never has his hunchback, there's different situations. He's saying there's no comparison between the two. So he says to them, on the contrary, you can never make my back straight. If you think you can, then you'll be a great doctor that make money. Meaning to say that you're trying to compare something that's not comparable. In the case of life, a person is born, and therefore a person could be resurrected. Right? It's a little less understood, but we will stop here. Shkoch for joining, and Chodesh Tov, Chodesh Elul today, everyone. We'll continue with the story of Gvir ben Pesisa next week. Take care, Lala Tov.
Bye.